Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is a very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, she's gays and days. Everybody listening, I'd love you to meet Matt McWilliams, the affiliate guy.
What's up, Angie? Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about your business.
That's a lengthy story. Gosh. So today, we're kind of, I have 3 parts to my business. The first part is our agency. It's kind of what we're most known for up until recently, and probably still, to this. We've worked with some amazing people. We've run affiliate programs for people like Michael Hyatt, Ryan Levesque, Lewis Howes, Brian Tracy, Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington, Shutterfly, Adidas, a bunch of others, Jeff Goins, Ray Edwards, some of the best people out there. We've worked with them. The second, part of our business, is we have a coaching program. We've worked with people. You may have heard of a guy named Jeff Walker.
Yeah, a little bit.
We coached his team, Tony Robbins and his team, Dean Graziosi and their big launch, a bunch of others there that we've coached over the years to help their affiliate teams. And then the third part of the business is we work with more beginner to intermediate entrepreneurs to really get into affiliate marketing or to get started with building an affiliate program. So all things around building an online business and monetizing that business. And then the fourth piece that we've just recently added actually is as we actually just purchased and bought and acquired a WordPress theme company. So really it plays into that third group, helping those new entrepreneurs, to be able to, you got an idea for a platform, you got an idea for a message. Before you can get to the monetization phase, you actually need to build the website. And we had so many people asking us over the years, like, well, how do I actually build the website? And I kept recommending this one company, Notable Themes. I'm like, well, these are the guys that we use. This is who I recommend. Go sign up. And I think we're their biggest affiliate. And finally, after a few years of doing that, I'm like, I just want to own that company. I'm tired of recommending people to it. Let's actually purchase it so we can do a few other things with it. And so all of those things, and this is something that I've learned when business, the aforementioned Jeff Walker actually shared this with me about 4 years ago. All of these things now start with my book, Turn Your Passions into Profits, which are kind of the beginning. Like, I don't even know where to start. This is the where to start. And something that Jeff helped me with about 3.5, 4 years ago. I remember I was talking to him at a mastermind, and there were just 4 of us at the table. We were in the mountains of Tennessee and just this amazing setting. And I just was like, guys, what I can't figure out is I just don't really know if I don't know if how to take these beginners and like, how do we, like, what's the thing that I'm working with them, but I'm known for working with these high level entrepreneurs. So why do I want to work with beginners? And he was like, well, what if that was just the starting point to get them to that high level of entrepreneurship? Mm-hmm. What if that entry point was nothing but step 1 out of 10, to get people to be a Jeff Walker, to be Tony Robbins, to be a Lewis Howes, somebody that you could coach or actually run their stuff. And that was kind of a big shift for me a few years ago, to be able to see the value in really working more with the beginners and helping them. And ultimately they end up scaling to that high level. So those are it's kind of crazy. Yeah. We kind of start off with one thing, and then we had 2 and 3, and now we have 4 pieces, and who knows what the 5th will be, if there will be one.
Oh, I'm sure there will be, just looking at that trajectory. And I find it interesting. Okay. So if I'm going to circle back to the beginning a little bit, because you mentioned a guy that I may or may not know. So if you're new to the show, Jeff Walker is, I was working with his team for a long time, running his copywriting team before I left to start this show and start my own coaching practice. So Jeff and I go way back. Matt and Jeff go way back. There's a nice little continuity there. And I love this concept of passions to profits. Like, that's one thing that I talk about a lot. I know that there are people that disagree with the approach of starting your business based on something that you're passionate about, but I really strongly believe that if you start something just for the money, then you're much more likely to quit or judge
Yeah.
yourself a little bit prematurely if and when the money runs out. And I'm sure that you've been in a situation, I know I've been in a situation where the money does run out or it gets really, really tight and it's tough to keep going, but that passion is there and it keeps you going.
Yeah, well, I mean, both sides are true. And that's kind of the premise, the initial premise of the book is I typically, when we work with entrepreneurs, whether they be beginners, 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, doesn't matter. They could be full-time, part-time, it doesn't matter. We typically see about 95% of them fall into one of 2 extremes. And the first extreme is they are super passionate about what they do. They love what they're doing, but they're not making any money. So they burn out because of the lack of income. Same with me. Like I've done both extremes. So mine was about 11, 12 years ago. I started a platform. I was making a major impact on hundreds of people. I couldn't go more than 3 or 4 days without getting an email, a blog comment, a social media message saying, Matt, you changed my life. Matt, I was thinking about killing myself and I didn't. Matt, I'm a better parent because of this. I'm a better leader because of this. You changed my life. You changed my life. You changed my life. My kids, like all these things about what their kids were experiencing and they were experiencing, their health, their wellness, their mental health, you name it. I was literally doing that. I was changing lives. It wasn't millions of people, but it was hundreds of people. And I was like, one day I kind of had the thought, because I'm like, well, it's been 2 years since I've been doing this and I feel good. I get the warm fuzzies. I love what I'm doing. I wake up, I'm passionate. I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning. I was writing blogs. I was recording podcasts. I was changing lives. And I realized that as my kids got into more advanced soccer and as we had a mortgage and as we had all these things that the kids soccer, club, that they don't take positive emails as a form of payment. The hotels, we spend thousands of dollars on hotels for our kids' soccer. I mean, literally probably $5,000-$6,000 a year on hotels. I could not there's no field on the thing where you enter your credit card information to pay $500 for the hotel and they take $100 off if you have a positive Facebook comment. That doesn't, the mortgage company, I tried, I was like, hey, look what all these nice people are saying. And they said, yeah, you still owe us $1,814.
Yeah.
There was no discount for all these things. It takes money. So I burned out and I stopped doing that. You mentioned you've done a little bit over 100 episodes. I stopped at episode 99. Who stops at episode 99? I did with that old podcast. I'm now on episode 530 something of the Affiliate Guy podcast because I'm passionate and it's making me money. So that's the one extreme. The flip side is the money's great. All their needs are cared for. They have, paid off house, a good car. They love they love their life outside of work, but they hate their job. And I've been there back when I was in my early 20s. I was teaching golf schools with my dad. And that's how I got into online marketing, which is a whole separate story. But basically I got to the point where I was doing, my dad and I were doing $20,000 in a weekend, split 2 ways. I was 20 into 23 years old. You can do the math on what $10,000 in a weekend provides, even though that was only about 20 to 25 weekends a year at peak. I was still making about half that the rest of the year. Long story short, I was making over $300,000 in my early 20s. That's insane. Most of my friends were barely scraping by. Most of my friends were lucky to make back then, especially this is the early 2000s. If they were making $2,500 a month, they were stoked. I was making that in less than a day. On some weekends working with my dad in these golf schools. Here's the problem though. I hated teaching golf.
Yeah.
I swore to myself, my best friend and I made a pact when we were growing up that we were going to play golf and we were not going to be one of those people who grew up playing golf and then gave up on their dreams later in life. And to us, this is what we said, taught old ladies in purple sweaters how to play golf. But nothing against old ladies in purple sweaters. That's not the point. That's just was not our dream. My dad was a golf instructor. He taught plenty of old ladies in purple sweaters and he was great at it. One of the best golf instructors I've ever, been around. And one day I'm teaching this golf school and I kid you not, about a 75-year-old lady in a lavender sweater shows up. And I popped out my little flip phone with the 0.2 megapixel phone from back in the day. And I took a picture of it sideways, sent it to my friend that I made that pact with, Hunter. And all I said was, kill me now.
Oh, goodness.
It wasn't because there was nothing, the sweetest old lady in the world. She was amazing. I would adopt her as my grandmother if I could. But that wasn't for me. I was not passionate about that. And so, this, this Angie, like as a female, you would immediately call your friend and say, "Oh, honey, I am so sorry. What can I do for you?" You'd probably send a casserole. But my friend Hunter, being a man, responded back with, "Haha, sucks to be you." And so,
I'm probably more in line with Hunter's.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, about a month later, my dad fired me because he knew, or as I like to say, he freed me, And so I've been on both extremes. I know what it's like to be passionate, but not making any money. And I know what it's like to be making great money, but not be passionate. So the whole premise of the book, the whole premise of our business is like, okay, how do we marry those two?
Yes.
Because if you are passionate, that's what wakes you up in the morning. So I kind of like to look at it this way. The passion is what wakes you up. The money is what means I get to do it tomorrow.
Yes.
The next day. And the money means that I don't ever have to make the decision of, man, am I going to work on my platform today or am I going to make money today? Because the other thing about it is like the weird thing is, my kids, they like to do things like eat and wear clothes and they grow. And so I don't know if you knew this, but when you buy clothes for your kids, they don't last.
Yeah.
And they also like to have like a room to sleep in and even to do some nice things like get a Nintendo and weird things like that. Cause kids are stupid, right? So they like all these things that I can't buy again with positive blog comments and feel good stuff.
Yep.
And so for me, how do I get the best of both worlds? And that's what this ultimately is all about.
I really love that whole messaging because I feel like a lot of the people that I work with, it's the same kind of thing. We deal with a lot of money blocks and money stories and this weird guilt that's common in early entrepreneurship around making money and charging money. And I think for, like I grew up poor, so I know where a lot of those money blocks stem from. But I do remember the logic of, okay, so I was struggling when I first started my business and a couple of really kind people helped me out. So I'm going to turn around and help people out as well. But without an eye on how to make it sustainable, how to make it profitable, I wound up doing the same thing and burning out, just giving away all of my best stuff. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But on the flip side, making a profit, making a living is also not a bad thing. It's not something to feel guilty about, especially if you're coming at it from the right intention, right? There is an intention that's kind of shitty, which is some other people are walking around with my money in their pocket and I'm going to go get it. Like that kind of, I'm just about the money and I don't really care about anything else. I'm not talking about that. But if you're going into this with, I really want to help people. And I think that there's a way for me to earn a good living while doing this. And earning a good living is going to allow me to turn around and help even more people. Like, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned the money blocks. I mean, T. Harv Eker refers to it as your financial thermostat, right? We all have just as people who are, from Canada, their thermostat of when they wear shorts is probably anything above 50. Mine's gone down as I've lived up north for about 12 years now. I'm from the deep South. And so for me, my, shorts was like 76 and above. And then when I moved to Tennessee, it became like 72 and above. And then, by the time I got up here to Indiana, now it's like 62 and above. Canada, like I said, it's probably 50. Above freezing, you wear shorts. We all have that thermostat. And so I came from a very unique background. I grew up with a single mom. She worked 2 jobs just to keep us on the right side of the tracks. But I could see the tracks from my bedroom window. Like we were just barely on the right side of the tracks. And, she also she worked 3 jobs, most of, my life. But I moved to live with my dad when I was 9. And my dad came from very wealthy parents. I don't really fully understand what my grandfather did, but it was something pretty hot. Like all the pictures I have of him are in like insanely nice hotels or like speaking in front of Congress and stuff like that, kind of some cool stuff. And so furthermore, when I moved to live with my dad, about a year and a half after I moved to live with him, his career took off. And so now all of a sudden we were living in Nashville. He was running a golf course there. He was making, this is in the early 90s and he was making north of probably 125 a year, which is a lot back then. Yes. And I'm hanging around with like doctors and lawyers and country music stars. Like it was nothing for me. Like we just go out to play. I don't know if you know who Vince Gill is, but like I'm going to go out to play and it's like, oh, there's Vince Gill. We're just going to play golf with Vince Gill for 9 holes. Like, and it was nothing, So the weird thing is like, because I got exposed to both, like I was middle class for like 18 months of my entire life. Right? It's the weirdest thing, of my childhood. Like most people, you grow up you grow up in the middle class and you stay in the middle class, or you grow up wealthy, you stay wealthy, you grow up poor, you stay poor. Occasionally you might go from poor to middle class. Very few people just immediately go from single mom, 1-bedroom apartment to wealthy other parent. Like it's a really weird dichotomy, you know? And the same thing was true like at Christmas. I had the 2 Christmases like most every child of divorced parents has. And the one, you know, you got the one, and then I got the one with my grandmother, my dad's mom, who, well, she had a lot of money, you know, and it was like, over here, you got a couple of these things. And then over here, I got like brand new golf clubs and, you know, all these things. And it was a very like surreal. When I think back to it, I'm like, I bet you less than 0.5% of people ever grew up with that type of background. So my financial thermostat is almost like bipolar in a sense. You know, it's like, there are times where I'm like, we hit a certain limit. I'm like, I'm not comfortable making this much money. And then other times I'm like, screw that. Let's just go make $1 million, you know? And so it's a really weird thing. And I had to, quite frankly, through some counseling, actually had to get through that and realize what was happening to me psychologically. And when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, what a cool advantage, because I know the value of hard work. I didn't just grow up with most stuff handed to me, but I did see what was possible.
Yes.
Like that was the most important thing, is I knew that there was more to working 80 hours a week just to barely get by. I knew there was more. Like to this day, you know, God bless that side of the family. But when you know, what you been up to? I was just working. Really? That's what you've been up to, is like just working? Like there's got to be more than that. And I'm not, the thing is, it's not their fault. Like I'm not criticizing them for that. But if that's all I knew was the just working side, you know what? At 43 years old, if you ask me how I'm doing today, I'd probably be saying just working, because that's probably what I would be doing, is just working. I wouldn't be on a mission. I wouldn't be passionate about what I'm doing. I wouldn't have hobbies. I wouldn't be having like kids soccer and all these things. I wouldn't be telling you about all the exciting things we have going on. I'd just say I'm just working, because that's what I would know. So I saw that side, and I went, because I saw the other side, I went, now there's no way I want that other side. And I think that's what happens sometimes if you grow up in the extremes and never leave the extremes. You either become very comfortable with that, or if you grow up like super wealthy and don't ever see the other side, like what you don't want, it's very easy to just be like, well, I'm always going to be wealthy. Why do I need to work? And then you realize when you're 40, well, I don't have any money anymore. So it's kind of, I think the background contributes to how I see those things.
Oh, yeah. And there was something that I wrote down and circled a couple of times that I really want to highlight for everyone listening. There's more to life than just getting by. I think that's something that really occurred to me in the last few years, and why I decided to follow my path. I'm a really, really good copywriter. I'm really good. That's why I worked with the teams that I worked with. And also, it got to a point where copywriting just wasn't lighting me up anymore. I wasn't into the challenge the way that I used to be. And when I sat back and thought about it, I was like, okay, what is lighting me up? What do I spend all my time doing, whether I get paid or not? And it was helping people that were in early and growth stage entrepreneurs. So like you were talking about the profitable podcast and the unprofitable podcast, right? This one doesn't make any money yet. It's on its way. But I do it just for love of helping the new entrepreneurs. And for the people that can afford business coaching, this is my way of kind of giving back to them and saying, well, hey, here's resources. You get to learn from all of these really super smart business people. But I love that. There's more to life than just getting by. And I caught myself in that trap when I don't know if you know this about me, I was a digital nomad after I left Jeff's team, and I still am. But spend about 4 to 6 weeks in different places. And it was your story about Nashville that caught my attention and made me think about it, because the Grand Ole Opry changed my life. And not in the way that it changes most people's lives, even though I am a musician. But what happened was I hit Nashville right as the COVID vaccines were coming out in 2021. And so a lot of the places that I wanted to see while I was visiting were still under extreme restrictions. They had crowd capacities. They had appointments that you had to sign up for. And when I signed up to go tour the Grand Ole Opry, it was the first appointment I could get was like a random Wednesday at 10 a.m. several weeks out. And that was going to be my only opportunity to go see this. And somehow, I don't know what it was that made me do this differently. Ordinarily, I would have just gone there in the morning and then worked later to make up for the time that I was out. But for some reason in that moment, I decided, okay, well, whatever. These are my working hours, roughly like 9 or 10 a.m. to 5-ish. I'm just going to make the work fit into what time I have left instead of working late. And that really changed the game for me because I started using Parkinson's law. I've talked about this on the show a couple times to my advantage and saying, all right, the work is going to take the time I give it. And slowly over time, I started realizing that what I was doing was fitting my business into my life instead of fitting my life into my business, which I think is something that so many of us, like we get trapped in that I need to bring the money in. And then before long, the business is running us. Yeah.
And I think there's, I'm not one of those people who's like, says, okay, you're in month one of your business. Your life is going to look like mine. Mm-hmm. There's iterations. Like the word iteration is probably one of my favorite words in the English dictionary because it means we don't have to get it right the first time.
Yes.
We can evolve. And I give a great example. My team came to me the other day and one of the ladies said, okay, so what is our process for assigning projects to virtual assistants? Mm-hmm. And, she's new to the team. And I said, reality is we don't have a process. So here's iteration number one, and I said, here's kind of what we do now. We're going to use that for a couple of months, and then we're going to figure out what we need to improve instead of trying to make it perfect on the first go round. So it's really easy to hear somebody, like Angie and go, well, I can't do that because I have a full-time job. Okay, well, you're right. You can't do that. So don't try to do that,
Yes.
But we all do have a limited number of hours. Even, for instance, me, I cannot function at an optimal level in less than 7.5 hours of sleep. That's ideally 7.5 is my target number, which means I set the alarm about 7 hours and 50 minutes after I get into bed, because usually I'll read about 15 minutes and pass out. And so for me, I need that. So that leaves whatever the math is, 16.5 hours. And let's be honest, I'm going to spend a certain amount of time doing, shaving and just going to the bathroom and, filling up my water cup and all those things. So and then I've got kids soccer and you got to travel to kids soccer and you got all these things that add up. And I want to talk to my mom periodically and other people. And I want to have spent time with my wife. So we all have a limited amount of time. None of us can work realistically consistently more than even on the high end, let's go 15 hours. When I was single, I think back to when I was single, starting my second business, I probably did work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was still only 14 hours. I still had other demands. Like I still had to call the apartment company when the air conditioning broke and took 15 minutes. And then I still had to be there and all these, when the plumbing broke and things like that. Like we just think about we can't work all day. So you have a limit, whatever that limit is, you got to fit it in. And so don't feel bad if initially your work really does take you 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's what it takes. The idea is to paint that vision. And so I believe that early on, there are things that you will do that you are not part of your ideal life. In the early days of my business, I did my own accounting. After a year when we could afford an accountant, I have never so much as even thought about accounting since then because it makes me want to kill myself.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either.
And then we worked our way through and it's like, I never thought there would be a day because copywriting is one of my jams too, Angie. I had to write an email yesterday. As we were pulling it off so quickly. We decided at 2:30, we decided to send this email by 4:00 that day. And there was no way I was asking our copywriter, to pull off an email in 90 minutes. It's just not fair to him. And I wrote it and oh my gosh, it was so fun writing this email and it was so good. And I was like, oh, this is such a great email. We looked at the stats today. You know what? It performed just as well as all the emails that my copywriter sends. The open rate was 0.1% lower. The click-through rate was half of 1%, I'm sorry, 0.05% higher. So basically,
oh my goodness,
I did all the work and got the same result as he would have gotten, but I had to do all the work, But my point to that is I love copywriting, and even we've, off-sourced that to one of our team members. You can't do that in year one. You definitely can't do that in month one. Early on, you're doing it everything. You're chief cook and bottle washer, right? And so don't look at that and be intimidated. It's just my encouragement. Well, Angie did that and I can never do that. No, you can. It's probably just not going to be, in the first few months.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I am pro grind I'm pro hustle, anti grind is the way that I think about it.
Yeah.
And there's a time to hustle. There's a time to work really, really hard. And there's a time to take it easy and rest and recover. And that's really what I see business as, less about balance, because balance to me kind of feels like we're trying to stand on top of a podium and just stay there forever without moving. Life is movement, like life is cyclical. And so we're forever going to be swinging back and forth between super busy and super chill, I think. And so for me, the goal has always been to make those swings less wild, to where I'm kind of more in the middle in a predictable groove. And that gives me more energy to react in those times when I need to hustle really hard.
Yep.
And I love that you also brought up that, like, you're not going in month one, you're not starting with a team. You're not starting with the systems and processes that Matt and I have built up. I remember when I first started the podcast being so overwhelmed by every step, because in my mind, I had compartmentalized everything to, it's real simple. I mean, all you got to do is record, edit, write the copy, and send the email, right? But there's a dozen little tiny steps that happen under each of those high level categories. And I think about episode 20, I found myself probably a couple hours before it was supposed to go live, doing it all myself, going, why am I resisting writing the episode copy? I loved this episode. I don't have a problem with writing. Why am I sitting here staring at a cursor like I haven't done this 20 million times? And I realized that I had all of this unacknowledged work, all of these unacknowledged processes that I was doing, and I hadn't given myself enough time to do it. And that was shutting me down. So I went to my VA at the time and said, this is what's happening, and recorded her a video. And she actually turned that into a process and told me, these steps right here are where you could outsource that to someone else. And these steps right here are the ones that you need to do. And that was where we started with that first iteration, that first version of a podcast process that eventually got me to where I am now, which is where I just show up and record, and then everything else just happens. That's my happy place. But that was just a series of steps over time. We created that version 1 of the process, and I started outsourcing the copy to someone, and I had an editor come in, and then we would look at it a couple months later, exactly like you talked about with your team. How is this working? Are there still bottlenecks? Are there places where the ball is getting dropped that we need to tighten up, or we need to add in some checks and balances? And so it was a process. It was a series of iterations over time that allowed us to get here. And that's what pretty much everybody's going to experience. So don't worry about getting it perfect. Just get it out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think back, speaking of podcasts, like the first, 100 episodes I did, I came up with the title and when it was going to release and all that. I wrote the intro. The only part of my podcast that I script is the teaser, the first 20 to 30 seconds before the intro music. So I do script that so that it's spot on. The rest of it is bullet points. But I wrote that. I wrote the outline. I loaded it into Libsyn. I uploaded the show notes. I published that. I published the WordPress post.
Yeah.
Wrote the copy. I sent the email, I designed the social media graphics.
Yeah.
What else is there? Upload. I mean, everything there is. Today, and again, iterations, but today, literally what I do is come up with what the title is and when it's going to go live, and I record it.
Yes.
I still script the beginning and I record it. And then I upload it to Dropbox. Everything else happens without me even knowing about it, And I assume that it all gets done because I've never heard that it hasn't, you know, but like all the other stuff. And it started with the very first thing I did was I trained my team on how to set it up in Libsyn so that I just had to record the file. And then, but I still edited it. I still edited it and I still added it to Libsyn. I just told them how to add all the other stuff to Libsyn and how to set up the WordPress post. And then I hired a graphic designer to do the image. And then I hired a podcast editing company, so today, all I got to do is talk, I got to do the thing that I can do best. And eventually we'll even get it to the point where I don't have to record every episode. We'll have other team members and, I mean, even like even some of the stuff in the, in the podcast, like, if I do an interview with somebody, I interview them, we talk, I introduce them, etc. But like I've got an episode coming up with questions, I'm just answering questions. And I didn't have to do anything for that. My team got all the questions. They put the questions in the doc and I just talk into a microphone and answer them, like that's pretty cool when you can get to the point where my involvement is 32 minutes when it used to be 2.5 to 3 hours. Like that's what you're looking for. But again, it was iterative, hiring the graphic designer that took off 10 minutes, it was only 10 minutes that it took off, but it was like, okay, we knocked off 10 minutes to do something else higher level.
Exactly. And I just want to reiterate for everybody listening here that it was a lot of steps and that each of us did all of the steps at the beginning. We did all that work to get those episodes out there,
every last
to
one
get those first iterations. So like, if you're thinking, Angie, Matt, y'all are full of it, there's no way I could ever work like that. Remember, it's just going to be a series of steps to get you to where you are not doing everything. And what I really loved about it was I thought it tied so nicely into everything that you were talking about with your passion. Is my passion creating the graphics for the show? No. Is my passion editing the waveforms and making it sound its absolute best? No. I do care about it sounding great, hence the awesome podcast setup. But I got an editor that makes it sound great. So I don't have to worry about going and doing all I don't even know the technical terms. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
I mean, that stuff works, yeah.
But like my passion is having a great conversation. It's learning and being able to share these aha moments from really smart people who have gone out there and messed up and done awesome things and learned awesome things, and they want to share it here. That's my happy spot. And everything else is just like, woohoo, cool. That's the cherry on top.
Nice.
I love it. So tell us more about this book, Passion to Profits, because I know that that's probably not where you started on day one with your business. How did that idea come about, and what was that like writing that book?
It was an 8-year process. I was in that 88% of people for about 6 years who said, I want to write a book and never did. And this is kind of a lesson for authors. Like the content in the book was, speaking of iterative, the content in the book was iterative. We had originally there were 12 steps that we developed, and then I realized 12 steps, it's too close to AA. And I didn't, that was just, I love AA for people who need it. It just wasn't something I had to have certain connotation, and it was a little bit lengthy. So we combined a couple of steps into each other. And now we have 10, steps in the Passion to Profit path, starting with clarify who you help all the way down to commit to monetize and create consistent content. But it was a 6-year process, to develop that content. And even like, I'll give you an example. There's a story in the book where I'm talking about lead magnets. And, how to create a lead magnet. And I talk about, I share like the rules that we have as a company, like, no lead magnet should take more than 3 hours to create, because if you take more than that, you're just making it way too complicated. And what do you do with the lead magnet? Number one, you define the number one problem somebody has. And number two, you solve it. That's what it is. And I remember, I was delivering this I was sharing this in a program we have called List Launch Challenge. And I was sharing about how to make a lead magnet. And just out of nowhere, it's like the 5th time we'd done it. Out of nowhere, I was like, I started talking about my dad. I'm like, I remember halfway through going, why am I even talking about my dad? This is really weird. My dad never owned a computer, never got on the internet, never owned a smartphone, passed away in 2005. Like never that I know of, never once got on the internet a day in his life. How could he possibly have had a lead magnet? Well, growing up, my dad, as I mentioned earlier, was a golf instructor. And I watched my dad every day on the practice tee, would walk up and down the practice tee while people were hitting golf balls, and he would look for somebody in pain. I don't mean physical pain, like, ow, my back hurts, but they'd hit a shot and they'd slam their club in the ground. They'd hit another shot and they'd mutter, oh, it's a stupid game. I suck at this. I'm never going to be any good. And you say, hey, can I help you? Yeah. Like, well, I'm the local golf professional. That's establishing authority, And you mind if I watch you hit a few balls? And they'd hit a few balls. And then my dad would make one suggestion. He would identify one problem they had. It's usually something that stood out really bad. I'm just going to make up an example. They are slicing the ball 50 yards right of their target. And he would change one thing, not 2 things, not 3 things, not 4 things. He was not trying to rehaul their entire golf swing and help them break 80 over the course of 6 months. That was not what he was trying to do. He was helping them with one thing. And they'd hit a couple of shots and they were better than the ones they'd hit in months. And they would turn to him and go, oh my gosh, those are some of the best shots I hit in months. How do I sign up for more lessons with you? And he'd sell them $1,000 golf instruction package. Now, that story that I just told with all the details that my dad never got on the internet, never owned a smartphone, never got on a computer, the detail about the little muttering and all that, that was iterative. I told that story so many times that every time I would remember another little detail. And, before long, I'm going to be like, it was a bright sunny day and the stars were shining. Like, that's different, And so, like, all these things, he was wearing a blue shirt and khaki pants, I don't add those details. But my point is, that was an iterative process
Mm-hmm.
So I developed these stories over the course of, 6 years, and I developed the process, and I got the case studies and all that over the course of 6 years. Then I wrote the book,
Mm-hmm.
and that was in and of itself from beginning of the manuscript till launch day was 2 years, 23 days,
Oh, wow.
But we did it, and actually I just got a text. Let me pull this up. I just got a text today. This was kind of cool. Let's see if I can find it here. Lady named Tabitha texted us in and said, Tabitha Hour said, "Hello, just got your book, Turn Your Passions into Profits. Yesterday, I read the first chapter. I created my avatar." So that's step one, is we're going to create that ideal customer avatar. And we go really deep into that, how to create that ICA. And then became unsure whether I could help them or not. Something that we see a lot of people do. Said, I wasn't sure whether I was qualified. We see that a lot.
Yes.
Step two is called commit to leading. And I'm going to share a little bit about what I teach in there, but this is what she wrote. I wasn't sure whether I was qualified, and then all caps, but I read chapter 2. Not going to lie, I cried. It gives me hope. It really does. I will be back at the end of the book to tell you how this goes. Thanks for writing it and giving your number out as well. I'm very excited to see where this takes me. The point there is, yes, positive endorsement of the book from a random stranger, but step 2 was something that we iterated over years. It's called commit to leading. Yes. And I share about it. There's just all these misconceptions about leadership. No, leadership is not easy. Leadership can be scary. Leadership, you might feel inadequate. It can be hard. It can feel overwhelming. But I share this, this idea in this book. And again, this whole story that I'm about to share was iterative over the course of months. That imagine you're on a hike. And every time I share about this, I'm picturing a particular hike. Then it's in the mountains of East Tennessee. And you go up 2 miles, and it levels off for 2 miles, goes down 2 miles. And this leveled off part, when you're up there 3,000 feet above, you're up, they call it a mountain, but it's really just a really tall hill. If you're from Colorado, it's a really tall hill. And so it's 2,500 to 3,000 feet up. And when you're up there, there are multiple places where you take one wrong step and you will die. You are not going to, you're going to fall over 1,000 feet. There's no way you're surviving. This is, it's just not possible. It's just steep rock face death, right? Now, as long as you pay attention, you're totally fine. But imagine you're on this hike, and you're on this hike with this super fit friend, the kind of friend who is he's been in shape for as long as you've known him. He never gains, even after Thanksgiving, he doesn't put on even a quarter of a pound. He jogs in place at stoplights. He's that kind of friend, right? Wears bike shorts to a cookout, smells like soup mix all the time. And he's just always, you don't have to ask him if he does CrossFit, because he tells you, every week, 3 times a day. And so that's this friend, right? And he is 2 miles up ahead of you. Now you're on this hike. He's 2 miles up ahead, and he's yelling back to you, "Hey, hurry up. And watch out for the what? Late. What am I watching out for? What am I supposed to be watching out? That's not where we lead from. And the problem is, we think we have to be 2 miles ahead of our audience, that we have to be such an expert and have it all figured out and have been in the industry for 30 years, that we have to be the Jeff Walker of online marketing, or we have to be the Tony Robbins of personal development, or we have to be Steve Jobs of creating a business, or we have to be the Martha Stewart of cooking and household care and all that stuff. We have to have it all figured out. When the reality is, that same friend, if he just came and was one step ahead of us, reached back his hand and grabbed it and said, "Hey, watch out, this next step is dangerous." That's where we need to lead from. And the cool thing is, he can lead from there no better than somebody who really is only one step ahead. And so this concept of only being one step ahead of your audience has really been one that has just resonated with people, like it did for Tabitha. And that's just a concept, that was why, it's step 2 of the book. Until you can get this through your head, that you are a leader, you're a leader by choice, not because you were born leader, or because you're some sort of an expert, that you have the experience necessary to be a leader. Nothing else matters. All the tactics and strategies in the world that I share in the rest of the book are completely irrelevant.
Yep. You have to be the one to put yourself out there. And I can't remember where I first heard it, but it was this idea of confidence doesn't come first. Commitment encouraged you. It's you deciding that, okay, I don't know what's coming, and there's no way to know what's coming, and I'm going to figure it out. I trust myself to figure it out. I've got people around me that will help me figure it out. Let's go. And that, I mean, it ties perfectly into the whole reason that I started this podcast was the way that I got known as a copywriter and wound up being on Jeff's team was that I joined this community. But I joined this community of copywriters, direct response marketers, and I just watched from the sidelines. And I was judging myself against these people and going, oh, look at that smart person saying stuff over there. Look at that I can't possibly compete. First of all, it wasn't a competition. What Angie brings to the table is different from what all of them brought to the table, but it would take me years to learn that. And so thankfully at the time, the community was small enough to where the leader and I had like a new member call. And he said, well, I noticed that you're not saying anything. What's going on? What can I do to make it more comfortable for you to post and to contribute? And I just deflected. I was like, well, I had 6 years of experience at that point in time, but I still thought that I wasn't good enough to post and that I couldn't help anybody. That's how messed up my thinking was. And, you know, if you're out there feeling this, I'm not saying that your thinking is messed up. I'm saying it's skewed. You can absolutely help somebody exactly where you're at, knowing exactly what you know. And so he said basically the same thing to me. I feel like you're holding yourself back. I feel like you're waiting for permission to be able to help somebody. And you don't actually need permission. You can help somebody here and now, knowing exactly what you know. But in case you're waiting for permission, I hereby anoint you expert enough. And that's where the whole concept of permission to kick ass comes from. Very much in line with what you're saying about just have that commitment of, I want to help people with this thing and I'm going to figure it out. And I can be right there with them, holding their hand every step of the way instead of 2 miles ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly understandable. Like I said, it's hard. It's not easy. But the problem with leadership, going what's scary, it's hard and all those things, they're focused on you. Mm-hmm. They're not focused on your avatar.
Yep.
And yeah, it can be hard. It can be overwhelming. Like anything can be hard or overwhelming. You know, I mean, marriage is hard. You know, it can be overwhelming, the thought of marrying somebody or parenting, you know, raising a child. It's not easy. You know, these are all hard, but parenting's not about me, about my kids. And so like, you know, I write about it in the book, I say, just, you know, remember, like your followers need you to lead them. Yeah. So when you see this, you go, okay, there's somebody out there right now who needs you to be their leader. In fact, there are potentially millions of people out there who they're waiting for you to guide them. They're waiting for you to reach out and grab their hand.
Yep.
And show them where to go. And to that point about what you said about, you know, the comparisons, you know, this big part of the book I've heard from so many people, they love this. There's 2 quotes in the book that I share that really, these are quotes I've lived by for about the last 10 years. The first is from a guy named John Acuff, and he says, never compare your beginning to someone else's middle. Yep. The second one was from Stephen Furtick, who says, the reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. You know, and we see that in something like parenting, right? We go, well, yeah, they're just posting all these great pictures of their kid. Look at their kids winning trophies and mine's, you know, sticking stuff up his nose. Hey, newsflash, their kids stick stuff up his nose too. Yep. I think they're posting that on social media though. Oh, their kid's just so, look at him. He got straight A's and my kid's, you know, saying he hates me and throwing a tantrum. You know what? That parent's probably been told they're hated at least 100 times. You know, every kid acts like that. Just nobody posts it on their highlight reel. Yep. But we see that as something like parenting or whatever. You know, we see that, but the same is true in business. Like it's really easy for me to talk about, come on a show and say, yeah, you know, look at this great process we have for our podcast now. And look at me, I'm only doing things I love to do. Yeah, it wasn't always that way. You know, it was hell for a while. I did not enjoy it. I remember very vividly, like nowadays, if I want a video uploaded to YouTube, what I do is I stand in front of a camera and I record. That's the extent of my involvement in that. Literally, that is the extent. I might have a meeting to discuss bullet points for the video with our ops manager, maybe if I need to. But most of the time, that's what I do is I stand in front of a camera and I talk, you know. It used to be, I remember vividly, 4:00 in the morning on Sunday. All right. This video is due Monday morning. It goes live Monday morning, big launch. I had worked on this video for weeks, 5 hours a day, 3-4 days a week. I mean, I put in 50 to 60 hours into this video. It was one of our pre-launch videos. It was the cornerstone. It was our sales video. Sorry. This is it. Like the other 3 were done. This is the 4th video. I mean, I had, hundreds of B-roll clips. I had I had all the graphics. Like I did everything in this video is going to look better than anything Jeff Walker, Stu McLaren, Michael Hyatt, Tony Robbins have put out in years. And I did it all myself. And as I exported the video, I get an error message saying these clips are invalid formats or something like that. Oh, and goodness. So I closed down. I was using iMovie even. You don't use iMovie to make good videos, but that's all I knew how to use. I close iMovie and I reopen it and all the files are missing.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember I was right here because I'm not in my studio today because my studio got destroyed by a flood, which is what sometimes happens.
Oh goodness.
And I remember sitting right here about 2 feet behind where I am right now, Angie. And I sat there and I just cried. 4:00 in the morning. I'm sleep deprived. I got to get up at 7:30 and I cried and I just cursed everything and everyone because I hated my life. And then now here's the positive part. Thankfully, about 5 hours later, as we were driving down the road, the thought hit me. It still says the name of the files. So if I download the files from the original sites with the same, and I can look those up by the name of the file, I should be able to recoup all of them. And I was able to. But it still took me about 5 hours of recouping it all. Like here I was ready to export this video 4:00 in the morning and I'm done with it. And all I'm gone. But I was able to figure it out, thankfully. But that feeling as an entrepreneur of sitting there on the floor, just sobbing uncontrollably. Here's a newsflash. I don't post that on social media, but we have all been there. You can't get the site to look like you want to. And guess what? You don't have a web developer. Like today, I don't try to get a site to look like I wanted to. I just ask our team to do it. But years ago, you know what I did? I sat here and cussed and banged my head against the table and talked about how stupid ClickFunnels is or how stupid WordPress is or how stupid this other thing is. And I can't believe that it can't connect. And why does Stripe not work? And who runs this company? A bunch of morons. And why don't better? Why is their tech support not better? I've been there. Not today, but I've been there. And so don't compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. And so the old saying, when the teacher is willing, or when the student is willing, the teacher will appear. And you remember this, like this isn't about you, but right now there are thousands, potentially millions of people waiting for you to appear. They are waiting and they're willing and waiting for you to lead them. The only question is, are you going to be their leader? And
yes.
That perspective, when it's not about you, it wasn't about me losing the videos. Because you know what? If I hadn't have had those, you know what I would have done? I would have just gone live because it wasn't about me. It was about them. I would have figured out, I was devastated at the time, probably because I was sleep deprived, but I would have figured something else. It's not about me. It's about them. When the tech doesn't work, I'll figure out a way to collect their money. When the page doesn't work, like I said, you know what? I can't write a sales page because the tech isn't working. Then I'll just do a sales letter. I can't do a sales letter. Then I'll do a sales video. I can't do a sales video. Then I'll do a sales live. I can't do a sales live. Then I'll send it all in I'll create a flipping Google Drive PDF that has everything in it. It's one of the highest converting things I ever did. You know why? Because our software wasn't working and I had to get out, and I did a stupid PDF in Google Drive, downloaded as a PDF, uploaded to the site, sent it out, ended up being one of the highest converting things we ever did. They had to, I kid you not, they had to email me and say they wanted to buy. We had to go into Stripe and create an invoice for them and send it to them. And I still sold more. And this is about 2 years ago, selling a coaching offer. I still sold more of that than when we had a beautiful, fully functional sales page with an order form. And I didn't have to do anything. You know what? When you care more about them than you do about your own feelings and how good something looks, you make it work.
That is the perfect note to end it on too, is when all of the feelings get really heavy, usually somewhere it's shifted to me. It's me centric. It's me focused, and how much I'm suffering, how much this sucks, and it's not what I want. Me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We do need to focus on us, because if we're not putting on our own oxygen masks, right, we can't help somebody else. Yeah. But, to me, the optimal way to get out of that me centric thing is exactly what you so brilliantly said. Focus on them. make it about the mission, focus on what you're doing in the world. And that somehow alleviates the pressure to like get everything right, get everything perfect. It frees up the opportunity to find creative solutions like you did with the PDF, which is freaking awesome. And it doesn't have to be perfect to be helpful, to be useful, to be right for your people. So good. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I could talk all day, but I'm going to let you tell us more about your book, more about your services, and where we can find out how to work with you.
Yeah, you can get the book anywhere if they sell books, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble. It's in stores, most Barnes & Nobles nationwide. So you can run to a store and grab a copy, but the best place to get it is passionsintoprofitsbook.com/PTKA.
Yes.
So passionsintoprofitsbook.com/PTKA. When you go there, there's an opportunity. We got over $500 in special bonuses for your listeners, Angie. So that's the best place to get it. Go there. It's got links to be able to get it at all the major retailers, and then you'll redeem that to get those or redeem that your order for all those bonuses. And then if you just want to check out stuff, go to mattmcwilliams.com. We've got tons of ways to serve you there. If you click on the About page or the Start Here page, those two pages will point you in the right direction, kind of just, wherever you're at, whatever level you're at. I mentioned different levels. So depending upon your level, you come to me and like, hey, Matt, I got 0 subscribers and don't even have a website. Well, we're going to start you at a different place than if you come to me and say, Matt, we're doing, $8 million a year and we need you to run our affiliate program. Those are very different levels where we can serve you. So all that's at mattmcwilliams.com. And then just click on the Start Here button up at the top.
Awesome. We're going to make sure that they have clickable links in all of the show notes and everything. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest. Appreciate you. And I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thanks for having me, Angie.
That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.